Hey, I'm Alan Furstenberg,
Hi, I'm Valentina Adami,
and welcome to Two Voice Devs.
True Voice Dev.
Valentina, fantastic to have you on. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for inviting me. It is such a pleasure and an honor to be here.
No, truly the pleasure is mine. We invited you on because I saw a number of your posts on LinkedIn that were talking about the recent Code with Claude event that Anthropic threw back in um, May.
Yeah,
And you were posting about it, talking about some of the new features that were on. So I wanted you to come on and kind of make sure everyone was aware about the new things that are out there. But first, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background?
absolutely. So, my name is Valentina. I'm based in Trieste, Italy. I'm Italian, as you can hear from my accent. And just to give you an idea, Trieste is in the northern eastern side of Italy. And speaking of myself, well, let's say that I have a non-conventional career path, despite,
those are those are always the best kind.
okay, uh, despite my background as a humanist, I studied classical humanities at high school, and then I hold a degree in communication. So, despite my background in humanistics, um, I decided to pursue a career in the information technology since it was the 2000, those years. Internet was becoming a thing. I got so fond of the internet, of the development, web development. So I had a chance to enter the IT industry and spent more or less 20 years. I had the chance to see all the entire life cycle of the software development process. And finally, in 2018, I entered the conversational AI space, the magical conversational AI space. That happened by chance. I didn't plan to work on Google or Alexa or any kind of stuff. Things happens. And in that moment, I realized that I have found my sweet spot in the sense of, yeah, in the sense I can mix my two souls, the humanistic one and the technological one. And I think that conversation design is the perfect path for me now. And I'm still working along that path. At the moment, I'm a freelancer, just to be clear. I've just started my business, so I consider myself a newborn business since it started on the 2nd of January this
Wow,
year. Yeah, wow.
that's always tough. I always admire people that even try to pull that off. So that is wonderful. So you're a conversation designer by profession these days, and I know that like everyone else, that means that you're dealing more and more with AI stuff. Um,
Exactly.
and it sounds like you tend to be leaning more on the Claude side of things.
Yeah, no, it's just your impression.
Okay.
No, yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely, yes. I use a ton of diverse generative AI tools and diverse large language models, but it is true that I am biased toward Claude and by Anthropic. Yes,
Well, and I
absolutely.
think that's normal. We all end up finding those models that seem to work best for how we work. It's yes, we're playing with all of them, but we all tend to find our own niche. And the reason why we like having a lot of different guest hosts is because we all tend to find different areas, different models, different things that work best for us. But at the same time, it's important to know what else is out there. Why are all of these things out there? Um, get
Yeah,
those different perspectives.
yeah. And I like the Anthropics model because it is different in the sense that they decided to focus on the ethical aspect of large language models. Um, for this is the first reason. The second one is they crafted an entire both personality for Claude. Claude is well known for its empathy, for the warm tone of voice, and it is perfect for writing. I use Claude for writing, for my blog, for my newsletter, for my LinkedIn posts, and also for coding. I think that Claude 4 in particular performs very well on coding tasks. And
Okay.
I've, and I've tested out.
So I guess let's start talking about the Claude 4 models that have been announced. So there's more than one model, correct?
Yeah, exactly. They announced they made a lot of major announcements, but I think that the all the event boils down to three or four big news. The release of Opus 4 and Sonnet 4. They are available on all plans. So if you are on a free plan, you get Sonnet 4. Second, they announced Claude Code, which is an agentic coding assistant that runs on your terminal and also on the Windows subsystem Linux if you are on Windows. Third, I will refer to MCP connectors. Okay, it is not an entirely new news, but they announced a lot of integrations, for instance, with Pierre, with Atlassian, Jira, uh, what else? Asana, also with Asana. And a lot of improvements in the APIs. For instance, now Claude has access to a sort of scratchpad. Um, um, I can't remember the exact name, but in particular, it can perform calculations. So it is able to read and analyze raw data and transform the data into visually appealing graphics.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's really cool. And obviously, and I'm still celebrating, Claude can now search the web. Yay!
Okay, so let's go into each of those four elements,
Yeah.
and what kind of what was talked about in each one. So I guess what's the big difference between Opus 4 and Sonnet 4, and kind of what are the major characteristics of each? What are the big new features about both of these large language models?
Okay, let's say that Opus 4 is the more complex model from the Anthropics family, and it performs particularly well on complex tasks, for instance, on math calculations or coding, and coding in specific situations. If you want to employ or create an AI agent, Claude Opus is the first model to choose according to Anthropic. And Sonnet 4 is let's say, an improvement from the previous Sonnet 3.7. It is equally okay for common tasks, just for question answers or for rewriting styles or also some basic coding that
Okay.
it's perfectly fine. And obviously, I don't need to say, but there are well-known benchmarks, software benchmarks that check, that verify that Opus 4 performs really well on the typical coding tasks. I have my opinion about the benchmarks, but let's say
By all means, share them. I mean, this show is very opinionated, so certainly we'd like to hear your opinions.
since I'm not a data scientist and I appreciate when Anthropics or any providers give out this information, but I think that as the final user, you need to test it on your specific use case. So in the end, it's how you feel if the model is right for your use case or if or for you. So I think that the current benchmarks are okay if you want to provide information according to the academic, scientific community. But on the other side, there are also the users, and the users are not data scientists, and they have a different feel for the model.
Right. It all comes down to how you're using the model and whether it meets your needs or not. Benchmarks, they're okay, and we've done a couple of different shows on benchmarks. But it really boils down to does it meet your needs, and how well does
Yeah,
it do so?
yeah,
Um,
exactly. Yeah.
okay, so what other features or characteristics do these two models bring?
Opus 4 was able to perform long hours in the sense that it was able to run coding tasks for more or less 8 hours. And that is
That's
surprising. That's surprising, yes. Um, I would
that seems
like,
long. Now,
yeah,
is that with a full? How big was the context window that they ran it with, or did they not say?
No, if you look at the documentation, the context windows is 200,000 tokens.
Okay,
But let me add this: they didn't specify if they were working on a pro plan or an enterprise plan. I think that they use some enterprise plan or Claude at his best. And
so
for this reason, they were able to reach these results.
so it's not entirely clear where this 8 hours comes from, what that means.
I would be very curious to learn more about the details.
Okay.
So
Um,
it's impressive. It's impressive because that raises a lot of questions. So would it be better to employ a fleet of Claude instead of employing developers?
I think a lot of developers know the answer to that, or at least how we feel about that. And I think like everything else, we're seeing these as tools, certainly, but not as replacements. And I think
Mm.
treating them as replacements is the path to a lot of pain.
Yeah, I agree with you. Absolutely, absolutely. But and one aspect that I appreciate of Anthropic is that they are providing sort of educational tools on how to use generative AI, and they focus on the strategic aspect. It's not only about prompt engineering or how to instruct the model to behave. It's about when and how to employ Claude or any other large language model in your workflow.
Okay, that's good. So very useful. Um, so thinking models or reasoning models are all the rage these days. How
Yeah.
does how does Opus and Sonnet 4 fit into that scheme?
Well, let's say they are hybrid models in the sense they can work in two modalities. In a GPT, a la GPT mode, which is in the standard bond, in the sense that they calculate the next token, near instant responses, said the guys at Anthropics. And the other modality is the extended thinking. So it's basically Claude is being trained to implement a chain of thought into the training process. And these models now are able to define a plan to think step by step before spitting out the final result. And it's interesting because you see the traces. It's like reading in the mind of the model. I think this is very intriguing for me.
I
I know.
I you know I had someone I like using the term reasoning rather than thinking. And somebody else called me to task about that because they said, look, it's still not reasoning. I mean, it's certainly not thinking, but it's also not reasoning. Um, these are still just attention patterns that are in the system. There's no what they may look like planning to us, but they're still just setting up text patterns. And as a conversation designer, that's not thinking or reasoning, that's just a conversation.
I agree with you that they are not really thinking as we humans do. That's that's sure. But okay, what other terms should
Well,
we?
I mean
I don't know.
that's why I like reasoning, because reasoning at least suggests that there's some mathematical process going on here, which
Okay.
there is. There's a statistical mathematical process under the hood. But that's also not what humans call reasoning. So no, I don't have a better word for it.
Yeah.
But saying we are seeing its thought process and seeing its reasoning steps, and like, no, we're not. We're seeing text that sets up a pattern, that sets up a context for answering our question.
Well, I will say that you see the plan, you see the steps that brings to that result.
Okay. Anything more about the model specifically that were announced at Code for Claude? Code with Claude.
Um, what else? The training cutoff is stopped at January of this year.
Okay.
I've heard somewhere, or I read that it traces back to March of this year, but in the end, it seems that it traces back to January of this year.
Interesting. Okay.
As usual, the system prompt is publicly available,
That's very
which is
interesting. I did see that the system prompt was public, and it was a fairly sizable. What was it, about 20 or 30,000 tokens, if I remember correctly?
it's pretty long, yeah. Mhm.
So that was a pretty decent sized prompt.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate that they made it public because this is another characteristics of Anthropics to be transparent. So there's no fuss about, oh, this is the new prompt engineering technique. No, this is the prompt you can learn as well. And so you can understand more about the reasoning of the model on the personality. And I think that is really interesting for me as a conversation designer to learn more about the kind of personality.
Okay.
I really
So that's the
appreciate.
LLM. Let's look at some of the other announcements. So what were some of the big announcements about the model context protocol integrations, the
Ah,
MCP integrations?
yeah, MCP is the talk of the town.
Everyone's still talking about it. We've done a bunch of shows on it.
Yeah.
Last week's show was Michal and I talking about MCP security issues, and so certainly there's a lot going on. I kind of wanted to know, but Anthropic, they were the ones that came up with the protocol initially. So, kind of, what are the latest announcements from them about where they're steering this protocol? What's next for them with it?
They announced a different bunch of the integrations with other providers, and to be honest, I can remember a specific announcement about the protocol itself. They
Okay.
provided they definitely revisited the documentation. I think it is much better documented than some time before. But specifically to that event, I can't remember anything specific to, or improvements about the protocol. They talked about a feature called memory. So they find a method to make Claude remember more context, more data. But I have to understand to dive deeper into the cookbook and understand how the things are working.
Okay.
MCP is one. I think what is the need for MCP? From my understanding, is providing more context to the model. So the model can now access your file system
Mm-hmm.
via a local MCP server, and I have tried it out on my Cloud desktop, and basically it's a sort of universal plug for diverse systems, for diverse databases or other tools, external tools, external systems. And this makes things much more simpler to.
I've always challenged this notion of MCP is the USB-C uh, for plugging into large language models. And I get that that's the aspiration, that we want something that we can just, take and plug in and it works like a charm. But MCP is not there yet. I liken it to the old 9-pin serial connectors. There's a standard, and everyone follows this standard, but there's still a lot of manual configuration you need to do.
Yeah.
USB to me seems more like plug and play. There's no configuration. I plug it in, it works. End of line. And MCP isn't there yet. I think we're heading there, and I think just like USB is, the evolution of the 9-pin serial bus, and we'll get there eventually, but we're not there yet. But it's always encouraging to see those steps that we are taking. You
Yeah,
know,
exactly. Yes, I want to focus on the next steps. I do understand that things are a bit tricky, and I have seen it on my Cloud desktop. It is buggy, okay? It's a matter of fact. Things are not working correctly. And yes, the USB-C connector is marketing copy. Okay, that's fine. I mean, that's normal. We should know it. But in the end, we see a sort of evolution. We started, and we were in 2022 with the ChatGPT. We were entering text, and we were giving out text, and now we are sending images. We can create video. It's
Sure.
amazing.
Oh, sure. No, these LLMs are have evolved much beyond language, or
Yeah.
different what we would think of as language traditionally. So some other stuff that was announced. Tell us a little bit more about Claude Code.
Claude, uh, Claude Code.
Claude Code. Yeah, there's a tongue twister, especially for
Yeah.
someone who isn't a native English speaker.
Yes, but it's even worse than GPT. GPT is easier.
Wow, that's saying something.
GPT is easier for me. It's really easy.
So tell
Code,
us about
code
Claude Code.
is yeah. So it's an amazing tool. You can easily install it, or it is available for Windows platform, Macintosh, and it's basically a coding assistant. It can run also in your Visual Studio, but not on Windows, or at least not on my Windows. If you want to try, start with a Linux distribution or a Macintosh. Otherwise, then you need to go to Windows subsystem Linux, but it works. Basically, it can assess your code base, read through all the files, and you can ask. So it's like chatting, having a chat with your colleague, and you can ask clarification about the lines of code, ask for I don't know, any kind of developer related tasks, fix this bug. But I I've seen that it is better to be very specific, otherwise the model get, get into confusion. There are a lot of documentation about the personalization, the customization of Claude Code. I limited myself to the basic tasks, for instance, writing documentation or asking clarification for some lines of Python
Hmm.
code, or write some Python code. For instance, Claude was so nice to create an MCP local server. Just to give you an idea, a motivational quote provider, so I can play with this prompt. Give me a motivational quote about work or study or any other category. And it was interesting because at first it wasn't able to make the code run, and in the end, after some back and forth, after 2 or 3 trials, he produced a JSON RPC code that worked like a charm, perfectly fine. And it's amazing because now I have this line of code made in JSON RPC, so I can really understand what is happening under the hood. And on the other side, I have the public available documentation from Anthropic, so I can match the two and understand what the FastMCP SDK is doing. And I find it very fascinating.
So it helps you build an MCP server.
Yeah,
Okay.
a local MCP server.
Well, if it's
Yeah.
using JSON RPC, is it local or is it where's or
No, it's a
it's a local server that is making JSON RPC calls.
yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So very cool. How do you feel like it's changed how you code?
I think it is helping me a lot in the sense that now I don't write software anymore because I'm into a different kind of activities. Now I am teaching people and I'm empowering people uh, with generative AI. But at the same time, I like to keep feet in in this space. I like to experiment a lot, and I think that it is important also to understand how these tools work behind the hood, because you need to understand the inner workings if you want to uh, provide suggestions to others. And it helps me also in learning. For instance, I asked Claude to prepare a plan to learn React. If you ask, for instance, if you ask to create a web page, most of the time it uses React. I have no idea about React. So for me, it is helpful to start learning new things.
Hmm. Okay. So that's good that you're, I guess, that you're able to use it to begin to learn something new and kind of have it help you understand what it's doing, because you get to say, what is that line doing? Why is it doing that?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. Same applies also for writing in English and for any other kind of tasks.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So speaking of web stuff, you said Claude also does web searching now. How does that
Yes.
fit into the whole picture of stuff?
Well, it is another agentic aspect to that, since it can understand the nuances of the user query, and it can perform multiple searches before providing the final response. You see also the sources, so
Good.
you can build. Yeah, it's helpful because as a user you build trust because you have the links to the original sources, and that's important in my opinion. Uh, yes, one of the major limitations of Claude was the inability to search the web. If you think of Gemini and ChatGPT, they were able to surf the internet from a long time.
Is this feature available through when using Opus and Sonnet? So is it available for developers, or is it just through the Claude chat system?
Both in the sense that it is available in the APIs.
Good. Okay.
And if you want to use the APIs, you need to obtain an API key, of course, from
Oh,
the console, from the Anthropic consoles. In that case, you need to buy some credit. And it is available also on the web UI interface. If you are, no, also if you are on a free plan.
okay.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So Valentina, it's been fantastic having you on. It sounds like these are some big announcements that have come from Anthropic. Always excited to see where they're going to be going next. For folks who want to reach out to you or follow what you're doing, where's the best place for them to find you?
Find me on LinkedIn, Valentina Adami, and I will be happy to connect with anyone.
Folks can find both of us on LinkedIn or share comments below. Uh, Talk about what you found most interesting from the Build with Claude event, or what you find most interesting about what Anthropic is doing, and we will talk about it all another time on Two Voice Devs.
Who was that?
Take care.
Take care.